Welcome to the podcast, Linda. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on. I am so looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be on your show. I'm actually a fan of your show.
Well, that's brilliant to hear. Thank you very, very much. So I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all my guests. What is your money story?
I love this question because when I first logged into your podcast and tuned into your podcast, I really thought, okay, this is like, I'm just going to hear the story of nothing but millionaires and how they inherited money, how they came into money. And once I started listening to your podcast, I realized that it was so much more than that. It wasn't just about showing off or showing off the money that you had versus the money that other people don't have or anything like that. It was more about your financial and your money confidence and your growth with regards to money and your money history and your relationship with money. And then I listened to a few of your podcasts, plenty of them. And some of them were I was very surprised. But with regards to my money story starts actually not with money or my own job. My money story starts with I knew work before I knew money. And I'll explain that with my parents. I am a first generation American here in the United States. And my parents immigrated from the country of Uruguay, which is a small country that is located in South America.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, they tried different means to make ends meet in Uruguay. And they just couldn't do it. They couldn't survive. Towards the end, they moved in with my grandparents, and it was 5 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. And my mom was like, I've had enough. Like, we need to figure this out. Like, it's, and the economy in that country is slower, and it's a different type of country. The weekly salaries are unheard of. So people live on salaries of every 15 days, which anyone, even those who have a high salary, 15 days sometimes is a bit of a stretch. You have to budget very hard. So imagine not being paid a large salary and still have to survive on 15 days. So they did the whole process to come to this country. And luckily, it was legally. And I had wonderful uncles that were able to be sponsors and so on. However, my parents came here, I think it was the late 70s. And when they did, they came to work for whatever job they could find. And their starting salary was $2 and $3 an hour.
Golly.
Yeah, $2 and $3 an hour. And they also had a debt because they had to pay back. They had borrowed money in order to obtain plane tickets and so forth to come to the United States. And they had to pay all that money back. Luckily, I hadn't been born yet. So this was my parents, my 3 older siblings. I have 3 brothers. And I was born 3 years after their arrival to the United States. I have to bring that in the background so that people can understand or have some type of perspective. So I was 3, 4 years old. My parents, even when 3 days after I was born, my parents always took me to work. So my mom couldn't have time off. And in those type of salaries and those type of positions that you have, you don't have something called family leave or anything like that. So my dad wanted to keep her home for a little bit, but he soon realized that with one small salary, he wouldn't be able to afford, and a meager salary, he wouldn't be able to afford 4 children and his wife. So my mom went back to work. And I just remember being 3, 4 years old and going to work with my parents. They had no babysitters. There was no one to really care for the 4 of us. So the 4 of us would go to work. And my parents, what they did was they cleaned offices and they cleaned movie theaters. They cleaned office, cleaned movie theaters, and on the weekends or so, I believe they did the newspaper route. So I just remember like waking up really early. I sometimes I think they did the newspaper route early in the mornings, Monday through Friday. So I just remember waking up really early. We had a station wagon, the old school one, which had that seat in the back where you climbed in the back.
Yeah.
So that was my seat. Before there were seat belts and there was no seat belts or, any of that.
I remember those days.
Yes. So I'd climb in the back and I would help sort and like the newspapers. That's what I remember. And like my other two brothers would like ride up and down, like walk up and down the streets with the newspapers as my dad would like drive. And I also remember as a kid going to the movie theaters and going to clean. So it's like really late. We were the only ones there. And my job as a 4-year-old, okay, was to pick up the paper cups that were left behind and the popcorn buckets. So that's, I learned to work very early on. But that's the way my parents were. That's what helped me have good work ethic.
Yeah.
And a strong work ethic. And my mom, it was really great. She never sugarcoated anything. She was like, listen, and she had retail jobs, and I went to her retail jobs with her, and I went to her she also worked in fast food restaurant. I went to work with her, or I would sit, the boss wouldn't let me be like actually like where the burgers were being served or anything like that. I would sit like in one of the booths and I would like color or bring homework or whatnot. And at Kmart, my mom worked at a retail store, and her boss would like let me stay there, but I was so well behaved. I had no other choice to be well behaved. My mom never sugarcoated things. She said, Linda, you have to be good, just color, do some homework, learn, read, because this is hard work, and this is what I have to do in order to provide the basic needs for you, like your roof and our food and your clothes. And I was like, okay. So, but I mean, it was fun because a lot of her coworkers, one thing that's wonderful about retail is that retail really brings people together. There's such a wonderful camaraderie in retail that you don't see in many other industries. And her coworkers would pass by and they would take me on their lunch breaks to kind of help my mom and like relieve. So I was on break all the time. I was like, what's this 15-minute break? Great. And they would like go and like grab me a drink or grab me a pretzel because, the Kmart at that time, those retail stores had like a little like restaurant or whatnot. So I was having fun, and like I became I feel like I was being raised by the retail family, really. When it came to my birthday or Christmas, they would pass by, they would bring me gifts, because also remember in retail you get your employee discount. So I was, as a kid, I was banking in. I was like, yes. One of the best Christmases I ever had, my mom worked a lot, but she didn't have any extra to have, your typical luxurious Christmas that many Americans have. She didn't even have money for a tree. So she walked in the back, grabbed a few branches, sprayed it with like silver paint, threw some tinsel on it, grabbed wooden little soldier decorations from like the dollar store. And she was like, there's your tree. So upset. I was like crying. I was like, we don't even have a Christmas tree. But it was very miraculous because that year, like all her coworkers, I don't know how they do, they like knocked on my mom's door and they dropped off presents. So that was like really nice and very sweet. And I still remember that Christmas. And I still have pictures of that.
Yeah.
And then as I was growing up, I grew up in Orange, New Jersey. I spent most of my childhood there. Orange is a suburb of Newark, New Jersey. It is basically a working class neighborhood. So everyone I knew, everyone's parents I knew that lived in the neighborhood, they all like were janitors, or they were mechanics, or they were, cleaning services. There was a few here and there, a sprinkle of a teacher among the crowd. But it wasn't, or they worked at the hospital, they worked in the cafeteria of the hospital. So it was those type
Very
of jobs.
functional roles.
Yeah, the essential workers.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very low income. It was a high crime neighborhood. Most of us, in order to stay safe, as soon as 6 p.m. came in, you didn't leave the house. And I wasn't allowed really out to venture in the neighborhood. I could stay like within the premise, like within my mom's view. So like within the front lawn. We didn't have a lawn. It's like a city home. So picture like Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Right. Something similar to Brooklyn. A lot of people kind of know about Brooklyn, New York, or the Bronx, where it's like you have a very small little front lawn. It's like 2 steps. That's your lawn. And so that's what I was allowed to do. But during my school age years, I would go around the neighbors and ask them, do you need garbage taken out? Do you need to shovel, would you like me to shovel your steps? And I would do that with the neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
So I always had some kind of like pocket change or pocket money. My favorite playtime happened. It's very interesting. When I was 11, my mom had befriended new friends in the Newark Belleville area, and they were all boys. But at that time, I wasn't such a girly girl, and I was the tomboy. So the boys took me in. I was like another one of the boys. Like
I was exactly the same. Yeah, I was the same.
I climbed fences. I climbed trees. So what we did, and they were older than me. And I had one like 2 or 3 years older than me. We would get together every weekend because their parents, the boys' parents, they worked with my mom in a factory. And in the factory at that time. And so we'd get together on the weekends, and it was fun for us. We'd come up with ways of how to make money. We were already entrepreneurs at the age of 11, 12, and 13 or so. And we had so there was Andrew, who was like I was best friends with, and then there was this his cousin Sergio. Sergio was our manager, and he came up with ways of making money. And we Christmas caroled for change, but we made like $50 each.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and my mom she knew I'd go out and play, but she didn't know that I was like out all over Newark, New Jersey, Christmas caroling for money. We help fix things around the house. We take out people's garbage. And then it was so interesting because then our manager, quote unquote, Sergio got more inventive. He's like, you know what? I found a whole bunch of these cell phone boxes. And this is when cell phones were like
the thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like a thing or whatever. So he said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to fill the boxes with rocks, okay? And we're going to stand on the corner and we're going to sell these cell phones. And I was like, I don't think this is a good idea.
It's illegal.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. Well, my 11, 12-year-old brain, I was like, my whole thing was like, the type of neighborhood, it was a rough neighborhood. I was like, what if these guys like get upset and want to bring in some muscle and want to like, assault us for being mischievous and selling rocks inside a box and calling it, something else. He's like, no, just make sure that they live far. Okay, we'll go to the furthest section of the town. They'll never find out. I was like, what are we supposed to do? Run and hide? And for a couple episodes, we ran and we hid. We like, oh my God, we had to run away from certain groups of people and I was like, that's the day I kind of, I hung up my towel. I was like, I'm not working for you anymore.
It starts to become too dangerous rather than a money-spinning enterprise. Yeah.
But I'm glad because at such an early age, I had somewhat of a concept of business. There's a lot of people in business that will do anything and everything to get money and don't realize that there's some type of ethics and something that's right and something that's wrong. And even though I, at that moment, had no legal knowledge, I was like 12, I realized, hey, this is wrong. Like, there's some repercussions here to this activity. I don't mind like if we make necklaces and we sell our own necklaces, but the rocks inside the boxes. But I understood the manager. He was trying to make $20-$30, which back then was like so much money.
A lot of money, exactly. Particularly to an 11-year-old child. Yeah.
So we made,
Absolutely.
so we made lots of money. So the time passed, and my parents moved from neighborhood to neighborhood. So I was always the new kid, which was really interesting. I went from living to every neighborhood that I lived in, it was predominantly a certain group that lived there. But I was always the outsider. I was always the outsider in a different one. So I start school. I start my second high school, and I really didn't have a great aesthetic. I really didn't have the greatest look. And mind you, it's teenage years. Teenage years by itself, it's awkward, you
Yeah.
know. And then
Hard.
add being new and being new student. I realized I started to notice, social dynamics, and I realized that they talk groups. People are more attracted to people who are attractive and who have the right look, the right clothes, the right hair. That's what I thought. Then I kind of figured it out. And I was like, no one's talking to me because I'm wearing like this jean for the second time this week, and my sweaters, my brother's hand me down, and like my sneakers have holes in them, and my dad would put like cardboard on the bottom to cover up the huge hole that I had on both sneakers. But that wouldn't work. It would still get wet, and it looked horrible.
Mm.
And then I was like, I realized I need clothes. I need to. So I'd go to my dad, and I'd say, Dad, I need new sneakers for school. Like I only have one pair, and he's like, Linda, that's all I can afford. So the argument started over a pair of Nike sneakers that cost $100. And he's like, Linda, that's all I can afford. I bought you new ones, and you have to make them last for a year. So I was so upset. I cried the whole night. Monday comes. I refuse to get on the bus, and I decided to skip school that day. Don't skip school, but I decided to skip school. And I decided to walk about a mile to the mall. And I was 13 and a half by then. And I looked at every store there was, and I walked into every store and asked them for a job. So I couldn't be in the main mall because the main mall they wanted you had to be 14 or 15 or something like that. Back then, and this was like the late 90s, you had to be a certain age. You had to be 14 with working papers.
Mm-hmm.
You could find a job that would take you. So I walked into the grocery store. I saw a grocery store, and they said help wanted. I was like, oh, okay, let me go in and ask. So I go in and ask the manager, I was like, do you need help? Like, I have no job skill. This is my first job, but I'm like eager to do it. And so I filled out the application, and I was ecstatic. I was so excited. This was going to be my first job interview. So I passed the job interview. He was like, well, how old are you? And I was like, 13 and a half. I'm about to turn 14. He's like, well, you're kind of young. You have to be at least 14, and you have to have working papers. And I said, I was 2 or 3 months shy. And I said, well, what if, you hand me the working papers. I'll go take it to my parents and to school, get it filled out. And then I just come here, like, maybe once a week or twice a week just to get trained. So that when you have me like on the books, as they call it, I'm already trained and ready to go. So he liked that idea. He was like, don't tell anyone. Sorry, I'm telling the world. But anyhow,
I haven't said whose. We're okay.
Yeah. And it was so long ago, but so I got the job. It was the greatest moment of my life. I was like, I'm going places here. And my salary, and I usually don't mention salaries in my podcast because I'm very protective. And, the world is very large and sometimes malicious, but I will talk about starting salaries. So my starting salary at the grocery store, which I had to work really hard for, was $4.75.
And you clearly remember it down to the cent.
I do.
Yeah.
And then like within 6 months of me starting, thank God for like minimum wages and minimum wage laws here in like the state of New Jersey and the United States. Within 6 months, they had raised the minimum wage. So then I was at $5.15. Yes.
You've made it.
Oh, I made it. Yeah. So my job at the grocery store, and it was such hard work for such little money. It was like I had to push carts, collect all the carts. And there was no cart machine because now they have cart machines. Like, no, we made this job easier. So I had to push carts, gather carts, bag groceries. My face would be frozen because I started like in the winter. So I would have like this huge like winter burn on my face. My hands would be chapped and cut from just everyone wanted paper inside of paper for whatever reason to bag their groceries. And I was within the first 3 or 4 months, I was like starting to get so miserable of the job because it was such hard work and for such little pay. But I will tell you, within the first 2 weeks, I saved up money and I bought myself my sneakers.
Well done. And I can imagine what a feeling that must have been.
Yeah, I had a really nice fresh pair of sneakers. I was like, oh yes, but you know what? Talking about money confidence, that small little purchase that I did, which I had to work and earn for it, that gave me, having fresh pair of sneakers gave me confidence to start talking to other kids in school, especially, being new. I didn't feel like, okay, I wasn't going to be the target of jokes,
yeah,
right? All the bullying or anything like that. So that gave me a little bit of boost. I was like, okay, yes. And then I started making friends at work because a lot of the teenagers started to get employed at the same grocery store and they went to the same school that I went to. So yes, so I got my first paycheck. But within the first 6 months, I was starting to get tired of the job. It was very exhausting. Grocery workers, you guys do a lot of work. It's very hard work working at a grocery store. And I started to have a real negative mindset at that moment. I started hating it. I started dreading going to work. I was like, it's not too much pay. What am I doing this for? I'm miserable. And then I caught myself at such an early age. By then I was 14, and I realized if I don't change my mental, if I don't change and turn this into something positive, I'm just going to end up torturing myself. Work is going to end up being torturous.
But that's a very astute thought process to have as a 14-year-old. How were you able to have that at that age with, teenage hormones going on and everything that you had dealt with at school, etc.? How were you able to have that conversation with yourself at that time?
I was very mature for my age. I was always reading. I was a gifted and talented student in grade school, and I was always reading. I was always reading self-help books, and that's one of the things that caught the manager's eyes at the grocery store. And then he was like, "Linda, you're always reading. I'm not reading magazines. I'm bringing books on philosophy and reading it on my lunch hour or my 15-minute break or whatnot." He's like, "You're always reading." I'm like, "Well, yes. I get bored. I love to read. It's my hobby." So I realized that, and I'm so glad I realized that at 14, that I really needed to change my mindset with regards to work. I didn't want it to be torturous. But with regards to a year passes by at the grocery store, and actually 8 months into the job, I realized, and this is how I started to change my mindset. Well, I need to change my mindset, be a little bit more positive about work. But then I figured out something. I was like, I see these cashiers here. How they get this job? It looks easier than the job that I have. Because I was also your cleanup at, there was a disaster on aisle 8 of the pasta aisle.
They called you.
Yeah, they called me. I was your cleanup girl, and I was also janitorial as well. I had to clean bathrooms. So I was like, how do I get out of this job? And then one of my first managers, I still keep in contact with her today and love her. I asked her, I was like, hey, M, I'll just call her M because I don't, Miss M, how do you become a cashier? What do you have to do to become a cashier? It looks like an easier job. And she was like, well, you have to study. You have to study for a month. You have to learn all the grocery codes and all the rules, and then you have to take a test. And I was like, well, is the test hard? You think I'll be able to pass it? She's like, I think if you study, you'll be able to pass it. So 8 months into the job, I study, I take the test, I pass the test, and I become a cashier. Yeah, that was such a change. first of all, I wasn't out in the cold. I didn't have to clean up on aisle 8. Now I have to deal with the customers a little bit more. No one trained me for that. That was something completely different. And there was retail and grocery stores and people's personalities. It's a whole other honestly, that should be a high school or college course, how to deal with people 101, because that would really help a whole bunch of people.
A practical psychology lesson.
Practical psychology with regards to it. And and also being hit on. I was only 14 and a half at that time, 14 and a half, and being hit on by older gentlemen, but I walked in and I had such a wonderful group of people, my manager and so on. He would cut that out real quick. Or if I had an older coworker that was like being a bit I don't know how to say it, persuasive, or almost wanting to act like he wanted to have me as a girlfriend and something like that, the managers put that out real quick, and they come over and they talk to me and they'd be like, I know you're young or whatever, but so and so works here, but he's so much older, it's so not allowed, and they would talk to me like they would talk to their own kid or whatnot. So that really helped. And I was always like very kind of scared of the world too. Okay. Very scared of the world, like, okay, and I listened, and I also knew how to listen to good advice, which not a lot of people do. I had that knack, like, okay, I feel like this person has the best intention and they're telling me good advice for my own good. So that happens. I was there for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. They move me, they promote me to head cashier manager of all the cashiers. I'm 15 years old. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a manager already at 15. But I got upset because I didn't get a raise. See, for me, in my mind, at that young age and that young brain, I thought of, okay, more responsibility should equal more money. I should at least get $1 more than being a cashier. But they didn't. My raise came and it was only a quarter. And I was like, it was a lot of responsibility. And I had to handle a lot of my classmates that were also in school and like running their breaks, and they'd come and complain. And sometimes they'd complain like at school, like, oh, I want my break at this time or whatever, because they were going to meet their boyfriend, or whatever. And I was like, this is just too much of a hassle for, the little amount that quarter raise for me. I'm out of here.
Good for you.
I'm like, I'm out of here. This is too much. So then I went to the mall. I skipped school again. Because let's face it, when you need to take care of business, for the most part, it's 9 to 5, right? So if you're going to go and apply for a job, especially like retail, you got to catch the managers at that time. You fill out the application on site. It was a paper application, and then interview you on the spot. So again, I skipped school again. I wasn't the best high school student. So I skipped school again, went to all the department stores, went and applied for a job. A manager comes down. They're like, oh, we need someone. I applied at Macy's. Hi, Macy's. And I applied at Macy's. I was 15 at the time. And luckily, I didn't realize how much luck it was. They needed temporary help for the holidays. And I said, okay. He's like, my manager was like, it's temporary, but if we like you, we can keep you afterwards. And you have a sign-on bonus of $200. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, so how much is the salary? And he was like, it's $7 an hour. But wait, hold up. Plus commission. So I was like, oh, okay. That is phenomenal for me. I was like, oh my God, it's like I can make $8 or $9 or even $10 an hour if like I sell whatever. And my first month on the job, I'm 15, have my working papers. I worked a lot. I worked 20, 25 hours a week while I was still in school. 20, 25 hours while I was still in school. And so school started to become a bit of a challenge for me. In retail, you work till 10 p.m. Sometimes you work till 11. Sometimes my manager would get a bit in trouble because they forget that I was underage. They were just my maturity level and like how I wanted to work. And so sometimes they'd forget and I'd stay later. And then they're like, Linda, no, you have to remind me to send you home at a certain time because you can't stay too late. But with me, I was like, I just want to make, the extra $10 an hour and whatnot. And I ended up working there 4.5 years. I made amazing money at that time. Astronomical. I didn't realize until later on how much money I was making. At that time, that when I started working, the economy was still good here in the United States, and people lived for the Joneses, and they lived to compete. I don't know who these Joneses are, but they lived to compete with them, and they lived to like be outlandish. They lived on credit card. Everyone when they opened their wallets as customers, they'd have 15 credit cards to department stores. So commission in those days were phenomenal. My coworker made a career of being a salesperson. He had been a salesperson for 20 years. At that time, all the salespeople came in suits. He was making an astronomical amount. He was making $70,000 a year as a salesperson,
which is excellent. Absolutely, yeah.
This is, we're talking about for his career, it was the 1980s, 1990s.
Yeah,
it's like wow. So for a while, I thought, hey, I can stick to this job. I can stay here. I can make a decent amount. But for me, things would change and would change quickly. The economy started to slow down. So my first year, second year was great. The last 2 years there, not so great. At that time, I had bought myself a car. I paid for the car insurance. I helped with groceries. I helped mom, with rent as well. It got to a point where school, I felt very mature for my age, and I almost felt like they had removed me from gifted and talented classes. So I like to learn quickly and learn quickly, learn fast. If a classroom goes too slow or a teacher goes too slow in teaching me something, I lose interest very quickly. So I'm all about accelerated learning.
Yeah.
So school became very challenging. I decided that I wanted to work full time and to drop out. So that was a very hard decision for me to make. I didn't want to make it. I tried. I'd go to summer school and make up any class I had to make up. I had one teacher that was absolutely horrible. And she, for whatever reason, I became her target. She was a history teacher. I became her target. And she would put me in a group with other students that were bad performers, put me in charge of the group. I ended up doing a whole group project by myself because I didn't get along with these other students. I'm in summer school. It's like almost my last year that I attended school on a regular basis. She walks by my locker. She made sure that nobody was in the hallway. She's like, so just to let you know, Linda, that I failed you. And what are you going to do now? Are you going to work at Macy's for the rest of your life? So I got so upset. And I was like, I slammed the locker, very upset. And I was like, I realized in my head, I internalized that. I was like, I don't have to put up. I put up with, my bosses, my coworkers. I put up with customers at work. Why am I putting up with this lady? She's being so mean to me for no reason. She doesn't understand or rationalize why I even have to work. I work so I can put on the clothes. And that's what Macy's gave me. Macy's gave me a lot of confidence. I was able, with my employee discount, with $200 sign-on bonus, to buy clothes, to have outfits, to wear some designer outfits. I started to make more friends, and school became more pleasant to attend. So maybe it was that, but she didn't really understand it. And we all have bullies in life, and sometimes bullies come as other students, coworkers, teachers. And I felt so bullied by her. I slammed the door to my locker and I said, you know what? All I'm going to tell you is that I'm going to make more money than you. That's what I said to her. I'm going to make more money than you. I know you don't understand everything. But this is I kind of just shrugged it off, And what I did was the day after, I marched into the office and I said, I found out that you can drop out. I looked it up and you can drop out at 17. So I'd like to drop out, please. But then it brought me shame because my mom, at the age of 40, she graduated with her GED. So I knew in my family's history that we had such an issue with education. It seems like we were cursed. Like we couldn't pass high school. So I was like, I want to quit school. And then I found out, I read it, that you could drop out at 17. And then I also found out that the same high school that was so horrible during the day, because, the kids start fighting. There's so many fights and cliques and so much high school drama, really. And I was so above that. I was like, I already knew what the real world was like. I just can I punch in, punch out, do what I have to do and leave and, live the rest of my life. So I signed myself out at 17, drop out. And then I marched two offices over to the right. And I realized that my school had a night school for night students. So I marched in. I was like, I'd like to sign up for night school, please. I realized that attending high school during the night would be so much easier for me. And I didn't want to do the GED route. I knew GED was actually harder than graduating from high school. So I signed up and my grades skyrocketed. Yeah. From being a C, D student, maybe occasionally a B, to being an A, B student. And
you found the right way to do it for you.
Yeah, I skyrocketed because I would work during the day. I felt more like a balance for me. I would work during the day, and then I would go to school at night, and I would either take a cab or I'd ask my dad to give me a ride. I didn't have a car until I was like 19. And I was saving up. That's another reason why I was also working to save up to buy myself a car. So I did night school, and I would come in. All the kids had their own stories. They had real life stories. And I still felt lucky. Like my whole thing was like, I was just trying to support myself and help my parents where I could. The other stories were like, a lot of pregnant teenage moms, a lot of the kids that had been in juvie. So that was my crowd. Yeah. And then I had the adult students. And I had my class valedictorian for the night school was an 80-year-old woman. And I loved that she was our valedictorian.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
She was 80 years old, graduating from high school. And she was like, you don't understand, back in my days, when I was 14, the woman's career was to get married, and that's what I did. I got married and raised kids, and then I had to raise the grandchildren. And she's like, you never stop learning, and it's never too late. So she's still the valedictorian for my high school, night school. She's still in my head, and she's been such an inspiration since then.
Which is marvelous. Yeah, it is marvelous. Yeah. I'm really conscious of the time and taking up your time. If I can ask you one question just to kind of round things off. So let's take us right forward to now.
Yes.
What does Linda do now?
Oh my God, Linda makes more money than I thought I would have made. I have excelled in my career. I'm in my I'm in my 4th college degree. I am pursuing right now, first and foremost, is my academic career. I get to do public speaking. I get to speak at universities and colleges. I talk about education. I've had wonderful money breaks as well. I've been a shareholder of a company. That was the greatest money, and the company sold. That was the greatest money opportunity that I had. And my greatest advice to people is budget hard. If you ever come across money, you get that money break where I have more than enough that I've had. Don't get too excited. Take the money, write it down, and plan it out. Don't get so excited that you purchase. Know what you have to pay things down. And if you can spread it out for the next couple of years, do that as well. So that's my money story. And yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's the early start of my money story. But there's more to hear on my podcast at Linda Love Talks. The podcast is on Spotify, so you'll hear snippets of my career. But yes, currently I worked in major corporations, major Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. I've been on TV a few times.
So it's amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a 180, a 360 completely. I never realized that I would be where I am. I graduated from the George Washington University.
Fantastic.
In Washington, D.C., and being a first generation American to graduate in our states, in United States Capitol, was such an experience and a surreal experience.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I've met many celebrities as well through work, lots of opportunities. So it's been very interesting. It's been a whole 360. I am where I'm not supposed to be, I feel like.
I love that. I
am where I'm not supposed to be.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. It has been really, really interesting and inspirational. How can people connect with you?
Oh, absolutely. You can connect with me via LinkedIn. If you look up my name, Linda Lemos. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Linda Love Talks on Facebook. That's where I am, those two platforms. And I look forward to hearing from all of you as well. And I love this talk, Lesley. I really do. And I love my humble beginnings. I never shy away from them.
Absolutely. We are what we are, basically, and never shy away from it. Very often there's learnings that come, obviously, but we are what we started off as and how we developed. And I'm really, really pleased that you've shared your experience and where you are today with us. Thank you very much for your time. All of your contact details will be in the show notes, including your podcast, so people can easily reach out and connect with you. Thank you very much for your time. Leslie. I really appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Take care. Bye.